I think the world evolved too fast because if you look at, say, the early 1900s, so from our standpoint, that's forever ago, but that's within some people's like one generation before.
Yep.
Like if you have grandparents born in the 1920s that are still with us, that's one generation before them. Yeah. So we lived in a world where in 1903, Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, their first flight. So once that happened, what happened a few years later? World War I. So they went from the first flight with this little bulky plane that got like 6-7 feet off the ground, went maybe 19 miles per hour. And then within 10 years, a decade, they were flying, shooting each other. So the world, and war is not a good thing.
The same thing happened with cars. I think in like the early 1900s.
It all paralleled.
Ford had he created an automobile. And then I think 10 years later, there was 16 million cars. Something wild.
Something like that. And Ford, he was so
without
key.
roads.
And that's a crazy part. So you see, that's a perfect example how we evolved from a psychological, mental standpoint so fast. Because before that, there was no electricity or very little electricity. It wasn't worldwide. And so those three things, planes, cars, and electricity, all kind of evolved over the same period because people didn't even want to use electricity. That's the funny thing. People were collectively against it because there was a big incident in New York. I think it was in the city, though. And this guy was working on the wires, right, up top. He slipped and got electrocuted in front of hundreds of people. So a mass execution.
Demon. So electricity is demonic.
Basically, that's exactly what happened. So Thomas Edison, name sound familiar, and the different companies, General Electric, all of them were trying to prove like, no, this is safe. So know what they did? Kind of looks dumb looking back, hindsight, but in the moment they thought this was good, they started executing animals to show how humane electricity was. It's like, see, that elephant got electrocuted. He's dead. It was quick and easy. Like, what? God. You just killed an elephant or a horse. So get to the point.
The electric chair.
But that was the next step. And they did a human, and it was horrible. Because they used DC current instead of AC current. And you know, Tesla, he's the one who said, let's use AC.
Yeah.
And everyone who backed him, Westinghouse, they're like, yeah, this is the way to go. Edison wanted DC because Edison, great entrepreneur, amazing, brilliant man. But he was hard-headed in his ways, and he lost that battle. Yeah. But get to the point, we went from walking horse and buggy to planes just getting 8 feet off the ground to fighting in wars, and then 50 years later to the moon. And then now we can talk to people in instant seconds. So going to the point of depression, or just mental health in general. If we compare each other of how efficient we are in responding, because communication's key, right? It's cliche, communication is key, but communication has changed.
Yeah.
Because think about this. In our parents' days, Chris Rock made a joke about it. He said, my father would go all day to work. I could have died, and he wouldn't know until he got off at 8. Think about that. That was only 40 years ago. Like, that wasn't a long time ago. So now it's like, if someone, like a girl, you don't text her back in time, oh, he's not that interested, blocked. So isn't that kind of, and I'm big on mental health, obviously, and if you even get to like men's and mental health, I'm not trying to go red pill or anything like that. I'm not,
yeah, let's go there real quick.
Okay, we can go there.
Let's go there real quick.
Go into that. Think about how damaging in general, not just for men, but in general, where we tie these expectations. Going back to that dopamine response, we're priming ourselves for expectations that aren't realistic. Like, why should I hold someone to a standard of if they don't communicate me every 20 minutes to an hour? Now, that's extreme, but I've seen and heard cases. Not personally, luckily, but I've had friends who, girls or people would be like, hey, she stopped talking to me because I didn't respond all day because I was working an 8-hour shift, a physical labor job. My bad. I used to work at another job I had. I worked at a women's prison for a few months, and I couldn't bring a phone in, meaning I was unreachable for 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
So it's like, this is unrealistic. So going to the point, we set these standards. And it can vary. It doesn't have to be just communication, but think about jobs. People are less employed, or if they get employed, it's not enough to live. I had my parents, they're a little bit older, born in the 50s and early 60s. And it's like, oh, they don't say this, but I know a lot of people from that generation might say this, is like, oh, just work hard, bootstraps and all that. That's great. I bootstrapped, and I slept in a car while being on ESPN. Like that's happened to me. So it's like, talking about mental health is like these expectations. I'm trying. Lack of trying, I don't think is the issue. I think it's just we have these standards that aren't congruent with what our expectations are. Like we expect here, but we can only give there, and that gives this incongruence where our brain, going back to that those 3 cycles I talked about, the perception, the planning, the error detection, and the reinforcement. So now perception is, okay, this is how my life should look. Nice car, bunch of beautiful girls on my page, flying out to Vegas or Dubai, whatever. And let's be real. 99.9% of people will never go out the country. Matter of fact, the poorest person in America is still collectively better than majority of the world.
Yeah.
So if that's the standard we're trying to put on the forefront when we say the world's so bad, and it's like, well, that's what we're living in, how can you expect to have a good mindset? Not saying it's a cop-out, but it's like, that's what we're working with. So we need to have a better, I guess, standard of where we want to be and where we should be.
Yeah.
What do you think people need? Like, are there some like needs that people need to head towards in order to maybe not have depression or anxiety?
Keep it simple, because the more you want, the more you're going to need after that. And the more you're going to need after that. Like I joked earlier, I left my shoes on the way here. I came from Florida. Got here, I was like, dang, I had to run and get some shoes. I got some cheap $20 shoes. They already broke. I had them for all of, I won't even say a day, because I got here.
Insert Vivo ad here.
And I usually wear those, right? Give me a deal, Vivo. But yeah, so that's the world I live in. I'm simplistic. Like I said, I don't wear anything really if I have to pay for. Like I wear my stuff. I wear Dustin's brand. I work with Julianna Pena. I wear her brand. I wear Phil's brand. If you got some stuff, I wear your brand. I'd like to get my clothes that way. Call me weird or cheap. I don't know what you want to call it, but that's how I wear. All my clothes are that. So it's like, that's just an example, but it's like that standard of you're always going to want more.